There was a happy ending to a shocking story this week as Lloyds Bank were ordered to pay £500,000 in compensation to a white man who'd been fired for asking a question in racial awareness training. It's the latest example of diversity, equity and inclusion discriminating against middle-aged white men. An inquiry found that the RAF illegally discriminated against white male recruits in a bid to boost diversity. And the military wonder why they're having trouble filling roles. Why would any white man want to risk his life to fight for a regime that discriminates against them? Glasgow Council put out an advert excluding white people from applying for a job. Bear in mind that Scotland is 96% white. How is excluding almost every candidate going to help them find the best candidate? Glasgow City Council apologised, saying that the advert wasn't meant to be made public, as if keeping racism secret makes it okay. And the DEI zealots are proud of their bigotry. The CEO of insurance giant Aviva bragged about discriminating against white men in the hiring process, making them jump through extra hoops that diverse people don't have to. If the races were reversed, she'd be jailed for hate crime. But these are just the tip of the iceberg. According to analysis by Bloomberg, in the year following George Floyd's death, 94% of new corporate jobs in America went to people of colour. If you were white and wanted a job, sorry, but the trendy new racism says that whiteness must be abolished. This isn't just a slogan used by radical Cambridge academics. It's at the heart of diversity, equity and inclusion. The idea behind DEI is that any overrepresentation of white people is evidence of systemic racism, and equity must be achieved by redressing this imbalance, no matter how it's done. It's not enough to not be racist. You have to be actively anti-racist. If there are fewer black women in the world of sheep farming, then that's clear evidence of systemic racism in the world of sheep farming, which must be redressed by preventing white men from becoming sheep farmers and only advertising sheep farming jobs to black women. It makes sense to them. DEI practitioners insist that this will result in better sheep farming. I'm not so sure. Perhaps meritocracy just naturally results in uneven representation. With equal opportunities, we might still get more female nursery workers and more male oil rig workers, more white players in darts and more black players in basketball. Or would diversity, equity and inclusion advocates insist on a fair representation of white people in basketball? And why stop at race? Perhaps basketball teams could be forced to include short people, obese people and people with no arms. According to the logic of DEI, it'll improve basketball. Of course, the push for diversity only ever goes in one direction. But it's not just bad for white people, it's bad for diversity hires too, as it places a question mark over their true ability. Do you want to get on a plane flown by a pilot who got the job because he's the best pilot? Or a pilot who got the job because other candidates were excluded? And they're not just anti-white, but anti-Christian as well, because Christianity, of course, is seen as the straight white man of religions. My friend works for a major software company, and their HR department strenuously recognises every possible non-native religious festival, sending out emails and arranging events for Ramadan, Eid and Diwali. But for Christmas, they sent one email out wishing everyone a happy end of calendar year. The HR departments used to be one middle-aged woman called Linda with a drink problem whose only responsibilities were to process payroll, organise the Christmas party and cop off with at least one colleague at that party. Now they've become armies of jumped-up little Hitlers, a bureaucratic drag on the smooth running of businesses, gumming up the gears and getting in the way when someone wants to hire the best person for a job, and wasting everyone's time with pointless, endless diversity training. It's high time HR departments were slashed back. Make sure we get paid, take off our holidays and stop trying to play God, Linda. And I am joined tonight by the brilliant comedians Diane Spencer and Francis Foster, and the lawyer and top quality broadcaster Andrew Eborn.
Hey!
Well done.
Yeah. I love the accolade, well done. And I love Linda. Linda sends her very best. And if only you had an opinion, Leo. That's Leo, you're so shy and retired. I want a campaign, by the way, for Lloyds Bank. I want them to have a little white pony just on principle. I think you could, wouldn't that be great?
Of course,
sure. They have a black, they do. know they have the black horse, which is glorious, but the white pony, that should be our new campaign. I think we should start it here on a Saturday night.
This transcends the human world.
I think you're right. It has to, doesn't it? It's a clear discrimination.
No, he's made a very good point. Because there are also, weren't there sports teams in America, Francis, you'll know more about this, because I know you know a lot about American stuff. Weren't there sports teams in America who had to change their names and their logos because it was offending sort of different groups?
Yeah, so there was the Washington Redskins who had to change their name, I think it was. And my favourite was actually the New Zealand all-whites football team.
Yes.
They got criticised because they said to call a team all-white is a symbol of white supremacy, discounting the fact that New Zealand is rubbish at football. So how can you be supreme if every game you lose 4-0? That doesn't explain it.
And obviously they've got the All Blacks as well, who actually are good.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
So they actually, what it's showing is that black is better than white.
Yeah, I mean, do you think the diversity, equity and inclusion bubble is starting to burst, Francis?
Well, look, I think eventually capitalism always wins. You can't keep doing this stuff and having bust after bust after bust. Eventually, people are going to go, look, it doesn't work. Like you said yourself, when results matter, like in professional sports, no one's going, you know what, why don't we get the person of indiscriminate gender who's never done a day's exercise in their life with a septum piercing, why not put them at the front of the Chicago Bulls? It's not going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What I find shocking, the Alumni for Free Speech did a survey and they worked out about 200 times as much money is spent on equity and diversity as there is on freedom of speech within universities. Wow. So you look at that as a real thing. Put it into perspective, however, of course it should be balanced. We should be blind to race, colour, creed, everything else. It should be a meritocracy. What they all say, they're trying to redress the balance, and I get that. But this has gone way too far. And this particular case, I was a bit puzzled by this report, that the 500,000, because they say, and I thought it was Tourette's that made you spit out words you're not supposed to spit out at the appropriate moment. They said it was to do with dyslexia.
Well, yeah, so this man was in, I think it was online training, and it was around racial awareness, and he asked a pretty relevant question. This is after being told that it was a safe space and there were no wrong questions, you could say whatever you wanted. And he asked a question about, what if, somebody who wasn't white used a racial pejorative.
They said the N-word, but he didn't say the N-word, he said the N-word. He blurted out the actual word.
By accident. But given that's the subject of the training, it's kind of understandable. And he was given no opportunity to sort of to atone for it or apologise. And the trainer said that she was so offended she had to take a week off.
A week off? That's extraordinary. The shock, man. That was the most shocking bit in this story. Use one word and she's off for a week.
Other people in the training session said that, she really vehemently attacked him. And they were really shocked at how viciously he was attacked after being told that it was a safe space.
Now,
sorry, I'll go for it, Diane.
No, I was just going to say, just for the people who are watching, I don't think we quite sort of underlined that this is the case of Carl Borg-Neal, who has recently been awarded $500,000 in damages, which is also the same amount you can get if you win the darts. Isn't that nice? But because he was unfairly dismissed for exactly the thing we're talking about, it was during an anti-racism training. There's 100, so you've got to imagine, there's 100 of your colleagues on this Zoom call, and you ask quite a relevant question. Now, when you do say the N-word, there is going to be some reaction amongst your other colleagues because it's a word that makes people feel like naturally deeply uncomfortable. But he sort of asked it because he said, well, what if a customer comes in and they use a word to describe their friend, but I can't use that word? But how do I react if they're using that word a lot? Because I expect the question was sort of around, do you politely say, I'm terribly sorry, sir. Could you not call your friend that while you're in the bank?
And it is exactly that point. But what he also says, he doesn't want the 500,000. All he wants is his job back and not to be called a racist. Now, Abraham Lincoln, I always like to quote, it's so topical. Abraham Lincoln used to say, if you count the tail of a dog as a leg, how many legs does a dog have?
It's still got 4 legs.
Because you can't count the tail as a leg. And you work on that sort of basis. I love the quote.
Come on,
Abraham Lincoln.
Don't give me maths
But this is the point. Just because you call somebody a racist doesn't make them a racist, which is the point. And it's going back to Lady Hussey, Marmaduke Hussey's lovely lady, and she didn't mean any offence by it when she said, where are you from? No, where are you really from? She wasn't racist on that sort of basis. And I would go even further than that. Even if you ask somebody the potential colour of somebody's skin when they're about to be born, I don't think that's racist either.
Yeah, absolutely.
When you look at it, when you think about it, basically that man got paid £500,000 to say the M-word.
Yeah.
Because he said it. And then he got a cash payout.
Francis, please don't get any ideas.
Yeah.
We don't have that kind of money here.
Yeah.
Who put the F in
I've seen the
Francis?
state of your chairs, mate. You don't have £500,000. I doubt I'd even get 100 if I said it.
It's had a happy ending for him. He's got £500,000.
Yeah.
But he's had his reputation dragged through the mud. He found it. He plunged him into a depression, and he risked losing his house in bringing the case to court. So, I really think Lloyds and the whole diversity, equity and inclusion mafia have behaved appallingly.
And you're right, he actually said it's not a happy ending.
I was going to say that actually what this actually shows, aside from all the jokes, aside from everything else, is that we have just lost any semblance of common sense. We have no idea to how to behave anymore with just actually thinking with common sense. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
At what point would someone step in and go, can we just accept that what has happened has happened? This is not a big deal. The woman's gone off work for a week, so she's basically had a week's paid leave to get over it. Can we all just move on? But nobody at any point in this process actually stepped in, and as a result, it's ended up in court and cost the bank £500,000.
Yeah. And
plus, it's closer to $1 million because they say there's legal fees on top, and good old lawyers need to benefit. The reality is that more times that we shine a bit of spotlight on this, the less it's going to happen. So actually the law was on the side of that sort of stuff. The employment tribunal said you were wrong to get rid of him. It should have been a fair process. He didn't intend it. So that is a victory, not just for him, but for common sense.
Well, now that it's starting to cost people, perhaps the diversity, equity and inclusion stuff will get rolled back.